The first time Damien called me resource number 42, I laughed. Thought it was some dry dev joke. Then I realized he meant it. That's what he called all of us. Not engineers, not staff. Just numbers on a Jira board he could reorder with a drag and drop like we were blocks of tofu in a protein spreadsheet. I'd been with the company for 5 years. Wrote the damn backbone of our system. Quiet, reliable, invisible. That's the role they love most, until it makes them choke. Damien blew in like a Red Bull-soaked hurricane. Tight jeans, tighter smile, waving buzzwords like a toddler with a switchblade. We're pivoting to deep behavioral analytics, he said on day 2. Modern architecture, no more duct tape code. Which was funny, considering the duct tape had scaled us from 12 users to over 1 million without a single blackout. But to him, anything that didn't require 3 Chrome extensions and an AI plugin was legacy, and legacy was failure. Day 5, he called a meeting, not to listen, but to decree. From this point forward, all systems will be migrated. All infrastructure decisions go through me. And yes, we are reviewing personal device policies. If you've got code, we want to see it. Someone made a joke about privacy. Damien smiled like a cat who'd just smelled rat. If you're not doing anything wrong, you've got nothing to hide. That's when I felt the shift. The air went clinical, cold. I watched seasoned engineers flinch like dogs hearing thunder. My stomach curled into itself. Because I did have something to hide. Not something shady, not stolen. Something mine. Something I'd spent the last 18 months building on weekends, sipping chamomile in my robe with my old cat napping beside me. A tool I'd started to fix our internal ticket lag and accidentally turned into a sleek, anonymized analytics engine powerful enough to predict usage dips and crash risks before they even happened. I'd never run it on work machines. Never used a line of company code, but Damien? He wasn't going to care about nuance. And before we go any further, because I see you lurking like the lawyers, Damien forgot to fear. Do me one favor. If you're listening and this already smells like the kind of tech story they don't want told, hit that subscribe button and give it a like. Only takes a second, and it helps more than you know. Plus, 97% of you ghosts don't sub, and my cat's gonna need extra treats when this tale's done. Now, back to Damien. 2 weeks in, he rolled out new contracts. Buried in paragraph 47, right between miscellaneous and go to hell, was a clause. All inventions developed during the course of employment, including side projects and derivative works, shall be considered property of the company. I read it twice, then a third time. My throat went dry. This wasn't about stealing code, it was about stealing credit, about stripping ownership from people like me who built things not for glory but because we couldn't not build. I didn't sign. HR smiled like they'd been waiting for a test subject. Oh, you don't have to, technically. Your original contract's still valid, but Damien's really encouraging everyone to opt in. Shows team alignment. Alignment, my ass. I'd seen this trick before. Push the change, isolate the dissenters, and let the silence do the work. Half the devs signed without reading. A quarter shrugged and said they didn't have side projects anyway. The rest? They were just too tired to fight. I wasn't. Because deep down, I knew something Damien didn't. I'd been logging everything. Every Slack thread, every file change, every access request. I kept backups of backups, time-stamped and notarized like I was preparing for a digital apocalypse. Because the day this smug bastard tried to call my code his own, I wasn't going to argue. I was going to prove. And when the ground gave way under him, I wanted the fall to feel biblical. They called it the standard refresh. Just some light contract housekeeping per legal, nothing scary. Damien even cracked a joke in all hands. It's not like we're asking for your firstborn, just your side hustle's soul. Everyone laughed. I didn't. Page 13, subclause 4.17. All inventions and code developed during the period of employment, whether on or off company property, shall be considered the sole intellectual property of the company. Right there in plain ink. No qualifiers, no time of day restrictions, no carve-outs for weekend work or independent tools. Just a gaping legal black hole into which anything I'd ever write during my tenure could vanish. I brought it up in the Slack legal channel. Just a soft ping. Hey, was this in our original agreement? No reply for 3 days, then an email from HR, cheery as a tooth extraction. Thanks for your question. Your current agreement remains in place unless you choose to opt into the new structure. Let us know if you have any concerns. Translation. We won't push it yet, but you just painted a target on your back. By the end of the week, I counted 24 engineers who had signed. Most didn't even read it. One dev literally told me, if they want my indie Sudoku app, they can have it. They didn't understand. Damien didn't care about puzzle apps or weekend React experiments. He cared about value. And what I had in my repo, that was value with teeth. The memo dropped on a Monday morning. Subject line, new predictive engine, internal innovation at its finest. I clicked the link and my blood went cold. They'd packaged it like a corporate miracle. Developed in-house by our elite architecture team. Screenshots, graphs, jargon-laced write-ups clearly written by someone who never touched a compiler. But what they were describing? It wasn't just like my system. It was my system. Feature for feature. Data model to data model. The language was different, but the bones were mine. I knew the shape of that tool like I knew the freckles on my own damn face. It was like watching someone walk around in your clothes, badly mimicking your voice, grinning for the camera while you sat gagged in the background. I didn't rage, didn't storm into meetings or ping legal like a digital banshee. I just breathed and started pulling receipts. First, I downloaded the test repo I'd left up by mistake. Public for less than 48 hours before I noticed and pulled it. But that was enough time for a clone, especially by someone looking for a quick miracle to toss on a pitch deck. Next, I pulled IP logs from the server, archived push notices, emails from months back where I discussed the architecture with a freelance friend, complete with timestamps and code samples attached. I filed them all into a new folder on my home drive. Insurance, Damien bullshit. Not subtle, not cute, but accurate. Meanwhile, Damien strutted through meetings like he'd cracked the blockchain. This engine's gonna change everything, he said in stand-ups. Our tech stack's about to go next level. Someone asked how long it took to build. He smiled and said, when you're visionary, things move fast. What moved fast was my patience evaporating. I contacted a copyright attorney I'd used years ago when I freelanced. Quiet guy, sharp as hell. I gave him the summary. He asked one question. Is the code original, and did you use any company assets? No, I said. Not one damn line. All written at home. All mine. His voice didn't change, but I could hear the grin forming. Then let's get to work. They called it the Alpha Unveil, like we were launching the next SpaceX rocket instead of watching Damien wag his ego around a shared screen. All hands, full attendance mandatory. Damien stood dead center in front of the projector like he was accepting a Lifetime Achievement Award for software he hadn't written. Behind him, the slides glowed. Predictive Insight Engine, Phase 1 deployment. I knew within 2 clicks it was mine, not in theory, not in vibe. Lineage. That flow diagram on slide 3, I sketched it on a bar napkin 11 months ago during a heat wave, drunk on iced coffee and sleep deprivation. The sequence model with the anonymized tokens built that exact structure after watching our QA team burn through 3 straight weekends chasing ghost bugs I'd already solved. I even recognized the color scheme, hex codes I lifted from a vintage train map because they felt kinetic. But what really gut-punched me was the tagline. We see patterns before they break you. That was mine, word for word, pulled straight from my README header. I'd written it at 2:14 a.m. on a Sunday while watching reruns of Frasier and pretending I didn't care about being overlooked. I froze, staring at those 6 words on the screen, feeling like I just watched someone steal my diary and set it to a dubstep beat. Then Damien started talking. See, our architecture team reverse engineered this solution using proprietary modeling approaches. He paced like he thought he was Steve Jobs. It's built entirely in-house, leverages internal telemetry, and sets us apart in a competitive field. Someone asked a question about the prediction thresholds. Damien blinked, smiled, dodged it, pivoted to buzzwords. That's when I saw it. Bottom right corner of the demo screen, buried, blurred, but still there. Original fork by Itran, my Git handle, my test repo, the one I'd pulled offline within 2 days of accidentally setting it public. I'd used it once to deploy a sandboxed prototype to test load speeds. That branch was private now, but the commit trail had been wide open for a full weekend months ago. Someone, probably one of Damien's code monkeys, had sniffed around, cloned it, and scrubbed the history just enough to slap a company label on top. I didn't say a word. Didn't raise my hand or call him out in front of the team. I just watched, breathed, counted backwards from 10 in base 16 because I didn't need to yell. I just needed to prepare. That night, I went home, kissed my cat on the forehead like she was a battle talisman, and powered up the old desktop I hadn't used since grad school. Pulled every commit, every timestamp, every draft email. I logged into my offsite backup server. Yes, I had one, and duplicated the full development timeline to cold storage with SHA-256 hashes on every file. Then I called Eric, my copyright attorney. He picked up on the second ring. Did he do it? He did worse, I said. He demoed it. I sent him the screen grab, the handle, the tagline, a 10-page document outlining the development log and repo forks. He asked 3 questions. I answered calmly, precisely. Every line of code had been written on my personal equipment. Every test had been sandboxed and conducted after hours. Every visual, phrase, and framework originated before that clause ever hit our inboxes. Do you have notarized proof? I do now. He told me to register the copyright immediately under my personal LLC, the one I'd quietly kept alive from my freelance days. Said we'd timestamp every interaction. That I'd maintain rights through originality and authorship unless I'd explicitly assigned them, which I hadn't. He was calm, steady, surgical. Let them think they've won, he said. I stared at my monitor long after the call ended, watched the screensaver pulse through photos of mountains I'd never climbed. My name glowed in the corner of the copyright form, and for the first time in months I felt still, not defeated, not anxious. Ready. Let Damien have his moment. Because what he just demoed wasn't a product, it was a confession. The best way to stay sane when your code gets stolen is to act like it didn't. At least not yet. Not officially. Not until you've got them boxed in so tight their apology has to be notarized. So I went to work, quietly, surgically, like I was cutting my name out of their mouth with a scalpel. First, the repo. I pulled every single commit from init dump to the most recent model update. I logged SHA hashes, commit authorship, machine IDs. I screenshotted directory structures. My naming conventions were as distinct as fingerprints. I found a debug script I'd once nicknamed Gremlin Hunter V2 and laughed. It was still in their fork. They'd renamed it, but the function comments were untouched. Word for word. I used, "Don't touch this or you'll summon Cthulhu." It was my dumb little in-joke. Now it was Exhibit A. Next, IP logs. My sandbox server still kept access records. The night Damien's version started development, I traced a clone request to a temp account from one of the office IP blocks. It pinged my test repo at 3:41 a.m. Pacific. Same time, a junior engineer posted in Slack, pulling an all-nighter LOL send coffee. I didn't blame him. He probably thought it was an internal resource. Damien didn't tell him the truth. Hell, Damien probably didn't even write a line of the port, just snapped his fingers and pointed. I pulled up my email threads with the freelance consultant I'd hired 6 months ago. Anonymized contractor, third party, paid from my personal LLC account. We designed the prediction thresholds together over a month-long sprint, all of it in my personal Notion space. Signed SOW Clean Invoices private Slack channel. I'd even posted a photo of my whiteboard notes to our thread at one point. The exact same formula now lived on Damien's demo slide 5. They hadn't even bothered to rewrite it. Then came the copyright registration. Took an hour, filed under my LLC, still active, still clean, still mine. I'd formed it years ago when I was between gigs and consulting part-time. Kept it alive for taxes and rainy day work. Now it was a legal firewall. I filed the tool under its full build name with detailed technical documentation, metadata, and architectural maps. Stamped it, filed the receipt, and downloaded 3 redundant copies. One on a USB drive, one in a secure cloud folder, one air-gapped on the desktop that never touched the Office VPN. Then the kill switch, a licensing agreement. Clean, professional, elegant. It granted commercial use of the software, restricted to non-exclusive deployment under advisory terms. Only if attribution was preserved, and only if the code was not presented as native or original to any party other than the registered author. If that clause was breached, license void. Immediate cease and desist enforcement. I backdated the agreement to the week before Damien's demo, with notarized digital verification and blockchain timestamp. I sent it to my attorney, who reviewed it and added a clause of his own. No sub-license rights, no transferability, and no assumption of origin. If they tried to pass my work off as theirs, they wouldn't just be in breach. They'd be naked. I didn't send it to the company. Not yet. I just kept it loaded, chambered, ready. That night, I sat in the dark with a mug of tea and stared at the license terms one last time. The flicker of the monitor lit up my living room like a war room. My cat jumped onto the desk and curled up next to the keyboard like she knew something was shifting. I wasn't angry anymore. I was ready. They thought I was some invisible back-end relic, a quiet engineer who kept her head down and only spoke when spoken to. But I didn't need to shout. I had proof. I had precedent. I had leverage. And now I had receipts. The first whisper came in the form of a Slack emoji, a little party horn next to the CEO's vague update. Big things coming, stay sharp. No details, no names, just corporate foreplay. But by the end of that week, the whispers turned to full-on murmurs. Whispers don't book executive boardrooms or order gluten-free catering for meetings that don't exist. This wasn't a test balloon. It was a sale. I knew the company had been fishing for an exit. Too many pivots, too many middle managers showing up with vision decks and no deliverables. But $145 million, that wasn't an exit. That was a damn coronation. And the crown jewel? Damien's breakthrough analytics platform, otherwise known as My Code. Suddenly he was everywhere. Town halls, client calls, walking through the dev floor like Caesar inspecting his troops. People started calling him the closer. He didn't correct them. He leaned in, claimed the new predictive engine had cut churn forecasts by 38% and increased behavioral tagging by double digits. He was slinging my architecture like a six-pack of protein powder, and every time someone asked him about how the model worked, he'd say, "It's a little something I cooked up during lockdown." That something was line for line mine, built on my weekends, sharpened with sleepless nights, and now being paraded in front of people in suits who couldn't tell Python from a pipe cleaner. I didn't say a word. Not in the meetings, not in DMs, not when the CEO asked Damien to run point on the technical briefings with the buyers, not even when I saw the deck myself, titled Internal IP Advantage, Predictive Systems, and watched my diagrams rebranded in the company's font, my language rewritten by someone who clearly thought asynchronous just meant cooler. Instead, I updated the license, revised the effective date with a digital seal and signature, filed an updated copy in 2 off-site vaults, cleaned the legal verbiage until it read like scripture. I didn't have to fight for ownership. I already owned it. All I had to do was wait for them to claim it publicly, to step on stage and say, "This is ours." Because that was the breach. That was the moment the trap would spring. Damien didn't realize he wasn't making a pitch. He was drafting a confession. Pre-acquisition prep intensified. They started holding daily check-ins under Project Zenith. Damien had his own little war room, whiteboards full of technical smoke and mirrors, assistants juggling coffee and cables while he repeated the word proprietary like it had holy significance. During one pre-briefing, he pulled up a chart of predictive accuracy curves. I'd seen it before, because I built the damn model. Even the quirks were still there. The little late-night compromise I'd made on threshold smoothing to get it to compile cleanly in my home stack. It was visible, in the graph. A fingerprint he didn't even know he'd copied. I stared at that curve and felt nothing but calm. He was so proud of his story, so smug, calling it his baby. Let him. Every lie adds interest to the debt. The CEO seemed starstruck, couldn't stop talking about technical differentiation. He praised Damien in front of the team like he was the second coming of AWS, and I smiled, even clapped, because I needed them all in. I needed them to believe. That week, the buyer's logo started appearing in metadata, contracts were being drafted, background audits began. But no one looked at me, and I liked it that way. The message came in like a whisper. Private, off-calendar, sent from a personal Gmail account with no signature. Subject line, Quick question on attribution, no logos, no headers, just a paragraph of surgical curiosity from a junior associate buried somewhere in the buyer's legal team. She'd seen the copyright filing, noticed a name mismatch between the predictive engine and the company's declared IP. The metadata didn't align. Deployment logs were off by weeks. And the kicker? The code package listed a license, a very specific one, issued by my LLC. Just wanted to confirm this wasn't a clerical error, she asked, and whether attribution had been addressed internally. I didn't blink. I replied 6 minutes later, not an error. I'm the registered author. The code was licensed externally to your target under a standard, non-exclusive agreement. Clause 6.4 outlines attribution requirements. Let me know if you need verification. No threats, no chest beating, just clean lines and timestamps. She replied an hour later, appreciate the clarity. We'll circle back pending counsel review. Off the record. Hell of a structure. Elegant stuff. That was it. No sirens, no alarms. Just a small acknowledgement that the game had changed. The deal was already hot. The money had momentum. But now there was sand in the gears. And I was the one holding the funnel. At the same time, Damien was exploding in Slack. He posted a selfie from the executive floor with a caption, "When you realize you're 2 days from a board seat and one bad slide from a yacht." People dropped emojis like confetti, champagne bottles, fire. The VP of sales replied with legend. One of the engineers asked if the predictive model would be getting a nickname. Damien answered, the closer. I bookmarked the thread, exported the log, added it to my insurance folder. That evening, he pinged me directly. Hey, heads up, we might need you to do a short write-up for the buyers. Tech background stuff. Keep it light, non-proprietary, just big picture. I stared at that message for a long time. Then I replied, happy to help. Just let me know what they need. Timeline, scope, access. I'll prep accordingly. He responded with a thumbs up and a "you're a star." I closed the thread. Then I closed my laptop. And for the first time in weeks, I actually smiled. Not because he finally saw me, but because soon he wouldn't be able to unsee me. Not when the buyer's legal team walked into that room with a single page and a single question. Everything he'd built his little throne on was about to come undone. And all I had to do now was wait. The room smelled like a burnt espresso and overpriced toner. Everyone was overdressed and overconfident. Damien most of all. He was wearing a blazer he'd clearly never tailored, pacing near the whiteboard like he thought he was about to ink a Forbes cover. The CEO sat at the head of the table, calm but twitchy, cracking his knuckles like it was a tic he only noticed on camera. I took a seat near the end. No fanfare, no laptop, just a notepad, a pen, and the kind of stillness that only comes from knowing you're not here to perform, you're here to witness. The buyer's legal team filed in, 5 suits, 1 paralegal, and the associate who had emailed me. She didn't look at me, she didn't have to. They exchanged pleasantries, small talk, the usual performative goodwill. Water bottles, slide decks, printed executive summaries with faux leather binders. Damien took the floor and launched into his pitch. The predictive engine has been a game changer. Fully built in-house, proprietary core, seamless integration with our existing architecture. You're buying not just code, you're buying vision. He said vision, like he owned the damn word. The buyer's counsel, a silver-haired woman with a voice like steel wool, let him talk. For 7 minutes. She nodded, flipped through her binder, didn't blink. Then she slid one thin document across the table, right to our CEO. It wasn't thick, it wasn't dramatic, just a single printed page. Highlighted in neon yellow was a clause near the bottom. I knew it by heart. Clause 6.4. License shall be rendered void and unenforceable if the code base is misrepresented as native or original intellectual property of the licensee. The CEO's smile faltered. His hands stopped moving. He read the clause once, then again, then looked at Damien. What is this? He asked, voice low. Damien leaned in, squinting like the text might rearrange itself if he glared hard enough. I don't know. Looks like a template or maybe something legacy. The buyer's counsel cut him off. Calm, precise. Was this tool developed by or for your firm? No one moved. Damien opened his mouth, then closed it again, then tried a half smile. Well, our team... No, she said. That wasn't the question. The air went dense, like someone had turned the oxygen knob down a notch. The CEO turned to Damien fully now, voice sharp. Damien, did you or did you not develop this internally? Damien glanced at me. I didn't blink, didn't nod, didn't smirk, just watched. He stammered. Something about derivative frameworks and prior art and team integration, but it was all soup. Useless. The buyer's team had already done their homework. They had the license, they had the dates, they had the signature, they had me. The paralegal slid over a folder with printed logs, commit histories, screenshots, repo forensics. The room was quiet except for the sound of paper sliding across mahogany. The buyer's lead counsel looked back to the CEO. Attribution was required. It was falsified. That voids the license, which means you're currently in breach and you don't own the product you've staked your valuation on. The silence was surgical. The CEO leaned back in his chair like he'd just swallowed a lit match. His eyes darted from the folder to Damien to me and back. Damien tried again. We thought it was internal. It was hosted. You cloned it, she snapped. Not loud, just final. I stayed still. No celebration, no smugness, because this wasn't about revenge. This was about proof. And now, they were holding it. By noon, the acquisition was on ice, not canceled, just paused. But everyone in the room knew what that really meant. Money hates uncertainty, and this was a full-blown identity crisis. You don't park $145 million because of a formatting error. You do it when someone's name on a license doesn't match the name in your press release. The buyer's counsel sent over a single-page request. Full audit of all source code, IP origin trails, and architectural authorship. Immediate. Non-negotiable. The clock was now ticking in legal time, which is to say, slow, ruthless, and fatal. Within 3 hours, Damien's badge stopped working. He showed up on the dev floor, tried to swipe into his glass cube innovation pod, and the light blinked red. HR met him with a sealed envelope. The expression on his face, somewhere between disbelief and cheap cologne, made half the engineering team pretend to look busy while their phones recorded under the table. No one said a word. His Slack account went dark that afternoon, all his posts deleted, threads flattened, history purged like he'd never been there. Only a few residual mentions left, ghosts in archived channels. I saw one from a junior engineer who'd once called him a visionary. It now sat under a banner that read, "Message not found." That night, the internal investigation confirmed what the buyers already knew. The test repo was cloned during a known public window. Commit metadata had been stripped, overwritten. My repo comments, sarcastic, clunky, unmistakably mine, still lingered in places Damien never thought to scrub. One even included a cat emoji and the line, "If you change this function, I will personally haunt your dreams." The buyers thought it was funny. Legal didn't. They forced Damien to sign an exit agreement, mutual separation, no press, no severance. Just a handshake and a reminder that breach of contract wasn't the only thing on the table if he made noise. He left the building without his laptop, without a speech, without a shred of the future he'd been bragging about just a day earlier. And me? I got an email. Short, direct. From the buyer's CTO, "We'd like to retain you as a compliance and technical transition consultant. You'll report directly to our legal and engineering leads. Compensation commensurate with scope and ownership. Please advise availability. No apology, no flattery, just an offer written in the only language I respected, leverage." I accepted. Not because I needed the money, not because I wanted credit, but because if anyone was going to ensure they never fumbled the truth again, it was going to be me. No spotlight, no announcement, just access, authority, and the final word on what belonged to who. I didn't update my LinkedIn, didn't post a victory thread, didn't drop a snarky quote about karma or IP theft or poetic justice. I just did the work. Because the real win wasn't what they gave me. It was what they could never take again. 3 weeks later, they signed the deal, without Damien, without bluster, and without a single reference to visionary leadership. The acquisition closed at $131 million, down from $145, adjusted after the IP audit confirmed what I'd been sitting on the whole time. But the clause they added? That was worth more to me than the missing $14 million ever could be. All proprietary systems derived from the predictive engine will acknowledge source architecture as licensed under Tran Analytics LLC with perpetual rights to attribution, audit oversight, and licensing compensation. It was a single paragraph. 10 lines, tucked into the appendix like it didn't matter. But it mattered. It meant my name was etched into the foundation of their future roadmap. It meant every version, every expansion, every investor call and developer onboarding would begin with the truth. This was mine, and it always had been. And now it always would be. The buyer wired the first royalty payment that Friday. It hit my account like a silent exhale. I didn't buy anything, didn't post a screenshot. I just transferred it directly to my mortgage and watched the principal drop to zero in one clean click. 30 years of financial servitude, gone in seconds, erased by the same code Damien once called cute back-end fluff. At the closing dinner, everyone was pretending to be relaxed. The CEO of the buyer's firm raised a glass to polite applause. Then he looked at me, first time all night, and said, "To knowing where your tech really comes from." No one laughed. They just nodded, respectfully. Afterward, I stepped outside alone. Cool air, low moon, parking lot nearly empty. I slid into my car, leaned back, and pulled up the private repo one last time. The one I'd guarded like a secret child. The one they tried to steal and bury and brand as theirs. I hovered for a second, then hit delete. No backup, no ceremony, because the value wasn't in the code anymore. The value was in the boundary. What I proved, what I protected, what I made unstealable. And that was priceless. Turns out, what they smirked at paid my mortgage in full.